Without data, you cannot learn. I think what is more important is diversity of opinion. That is so critical in the board that you design. Customers actually were looking for just the opposite of the complexity. They were looking for simplicity. We only have two currencies: trust and a track record.
I'm very excited for this week's episode of the Silicon Valley podcast. I'm here with Pankaj, who is also going to be speaking at our August 14th event at WorkWise in San Francisco. So if you like this episode, you'll love coming to see his panel live. But we'll have more information at the end of this podcast. But let's just start off. Pankaj, give us a little bit of background of your career up to this point before we start diving into the questions.
Absolutely. I have been in industry for a number of years. Started my career in Boston, working in computer companies back then. Boston was, or Route 128 was at the peak of the uh, industry at that time. And I worked for 11 years in three computer companies. None of them exist anymore. It shows as to what market transitions can do to you. And they were Prime Computer, Digital Equipment Corporation, and Apollo Computer. I
Now, were
moved
all
to
those
West.
acquired? Did they just
They
go the way of the
eventually got
dodo bird? What happened?
they eventually got acquired by different companies. One by private equity. DAC became part of uh, 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 the company that HP acquired, and Apollo was also acquired by HP. So they all got acquired, but not quite met the fate that they should have met. I mean, they were premier companies, and they have actually seeded some brilliant talent in today's Microsoft, Google, and other companies. So I'm very proud of the talent that has come out of those companies, except for the fact that those companies didn't do well. So, but it was a great experience working at the peak of my curiosity and everything else. And then I moved to the West Coast in late '87. I started a company, and this was more on developing ASIC cores and some computer-aided design tools. I sold the company in two pieces, one to Toshiba, one to EMC. And then I joined a
Can we stay
company.
right there for a moment? A lot of our listeners, I mean, their goal is to eventually sell a company. You sold one company in two pieces.
Yeah, there
How
were
did,
two
how did that
separate.
work?
Well, I mean, they had two distinct persona. One was focused on developing some ASIC core designs for Intel peripherals, and the second one was more focused on computer-aided design tools. So that's why they got sold to two separate parties. But they were not giant outcomes. We are talking about '92, right? So this was still before this billions of dollars of money that we are talking about today. So it was very different. I came to the Bay Area in early '93. I joined Pioneer in ATM and frame relay switching, company called Stratacom. Those were the early days of internet, actually, and we had we had developed technologies where it was called the fast packet technology, where voice, video, and data could be transmitted across the links with the right latency and stuff. So this was like a very early beginnings of what we now know and enjoy as internet. I ran a pretty large portion of engineering for the company. The company got sold to Cisco in '96. So I have been with Cisco pretty much throughout my career until I retired in end of 2016. I left Cisco at the height of internet bubble in '99. I joined one of the startups backed by Vinod Khosla at that time, and Vinod was able to turn around, and after we hired a bunch of very sharp engineers in very short time, he was able to turn around and sell the company to a public company, Redback, for $5 billion in less than 2 months without us having a product in our hand. And I can tell you those days are not coming back. Okay, so don't expect that. Uh, and then I was there for about 3 years, came back to Cisco again, and I started my career back in Cisco as general manager of one of the business units. From there, I went on to run service provider a business for Cisco, which was a good 10 to $12 billion business. Then eventually, I became the chief development officer. I'm sorry, and I had responsibility for all of engineering, marketing, and product management. And I had over 29,000 engineers and marketeers in my organization. And I was responsible for driving about 38 out of $48 billion in revenue for the company. So all the product and solution revenue came from my side of the house. And then the services revenue came from my peer side. So John and I, we both retired end of 16. And John went off to do JC2 Ventures that I helped him for about a year or so to do due diligence in the companies that we wanted to invest in. We both invested in about 10, 11 companies together. But behind the scene, I was working on what turned out to be Nile. And we formed Nile as a company in October of 2018. And here we are.
So you stayed retired for less than 2 years.
Oh my God. No, no, no. I wasn't retired. I was already during that time, I was already on at a peak. I got on the board of about 10 companies, 10 startups. Now I have backed off and I'm only on very few startup boards because I need to focus my time on Nile. So no, I was never retired. I'm not the type I'll ever retire.
So what's more challenging, running the 34 billion of a P&L or being a startup founder from square one?
Well, it was 38 billion, but Sean, they present very different challenges, right? They're distinctly very different challenges. By the way, you work. I have not worked less hard in either of the two environments. I always been workaholic, and that has stayed with me. But they're in a larger environment. You are always on the customer focus when you have such a large deployed a base. You are always on the edge with the customers because there's always some crisis or the other going on, right? That you have to attend to. In the meantime, you also have to pay attention to. I used to have a management responsibility for over a $6 billion annual R&D budget, which is a lot of money, and how do you spend that wisely? Where do you invest, right? That takes a lot out of you. And then in a large environment where you have such a large group, the people part plays a huge role. So the strategy for engineering and strategy for the company, which will be driven eventually in great part by engineering, people part, and the customers. These are the three areas which you end up in focusing in the large environment. In a smaller company in Nile, when we started, the good and bad part is that when you start, you don't have a customer, right? So you don't have to worry about that. However, you do talk to a lot of customers to get their input into what you are trying to do. And because you simply can't build a company thinking in the back of your garden and say, which by the way, we did to a great degree, but even then, you do have to talk to a lot of customers to bounce off the ideas about what you're thinking. But you don't have to worry about day to day crisis of the customers taking a hit at a customer in a given environment. So you are able to focus your time and energy on shaping your vision, then in turn shaping your strategy, and then focusing on the right talent. And I would say this, that in a startup, hiring a right talent is even a lot more critical than in a large company. Because in a large company, because when you have so many people, you have a significant slack, right? You can weather some hits. The hits in a startup environment, when you hire either the wrong talent or whether you hire somebody who is not going to be a cultural fit for you, you can end up in creating a setback for yourself in terms of your execution. So that's where I would say a lot of differences come from.
So then, how much research was done before starting Nile, or did you have kind of a very good idea from all those past years of all the conversations, all the research? How, I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is you probably had so many ideas. How did Nile become the one that you wanted to focus on?
So I did.
And actually, before that, even tell our audience, what does Nile do for
Yeah.
people that may not be familiar?
Sure. I'll come back to that in a second on what Nile does. You know, uh, Being now cumulatively, I have been in networking for 33 years of my career. Cisco is 41 years old. So, pretty much my almost my entire life. And especially being head chef of the kitchen, you learn a lot. You learn a lot about every recipe, what goes right, what goes wrong, how the kitchen gets messy, and what exactly needs to be done to create the three Michelin star recipes and deliver that on every table every single day, right? And so that gave me a huge benefit on what I had seen and what I really wanted to do in my career. And, this journey was once in a long time coming to create something disruptive. And I wasn't really trying to disrupt something for the heck of disrupting, but I wanted to create something which can resolve the insane level of complexity of networking. And I wanted to deliver a very simple and secure access to a highly reliable and a very high performance networking service, which we have done today. And that was the starting thesis of what we wanted to do, right? But it all came from seeing what I saw in my career, right? And I mean, uh, eh, and you can say, how did this happen and why did this happen? Like, it's not like it was like, somebody designed it to make it that happen. But what happens is that when you're building product after product and you're delivering feature after feature, month after month, quarter after quarter, year after year, eventually you end up in losing sight of what customers really want. And customers actually were looking for just the opposite of the complexity. They were looking for simplicity. They were looking for ease of use. They were saying, hey, I want to use little or no staff. We already have troubles to hire the people. I want something simple to install. I want something secure. And by the way, in short, give me something that I want and I need. And I want to, by the way, last but not the least, I want to bite by the drink. And I just want it to work. And I really don't care what happens behind the scene. So this is what gave us the impetus to build Nile. And so we are, as a company, what we do now is we are defined by an audacious vision to remove the human dependence from the management of the network. Nile's clean sheet approach does to networking what cloud providers like AWS, Azure, and GCP did to compute and storage. By bringing a relentless focus on what we call disruptive simplicity, We are aiming for enterprises and organizations to architect how they architect, design, acquire, deploy, secure, and maintain connectivity through an offer. It's a pure service offer, not like a fancy lease mechanism that is wrapped around the product, right? And number one, as part of that, we shift the dynamic of the network from security worry to a security force multiplier. More importantly, that requires no network operations and that delivers true first zero trust campus network. Number two, we deliver a holistic pay as you go or pay as you use consumption model, which aligns to either square footage or the number of users in a given building. Number three, we are the only one that uniquely guarantees the network performance levels based on the outcomes that matter the most to customers, which is availability, capacity, and the coverage. And last but not the least, we remove the complexity and we reduce the business risk by delivering the complete lifecycle management without the management. So in our universe, customers never pay for any hardware, software, licenses, no maintenance contracts. They never have to worry about updating the technologies. We will do that as long as they subscribe to the service. Software updates, security patches, all happens behind the scene automatically. And by the way, they never have to worry about end of life of anything. We do all of this without the management with the self-driven network customer experience, which is backed by extensive user monitoring, analytics, and the AI ML driven automation. That's what we do, Sean, in nutshell.
So, question there. I mean, there's a lot of things that came to mind, but one of them was around customer experience. How is the world evolving the customer experience with AI, with technology right now?
So that's a great question. By the way, what I would say is that we were fortunate to build this company from scratch a little bit over 6 years ago. And when we built it, I actually learned a long time back to my opening comment on the experience of my early career in the computer companies. And these were, by the way, great companies of its time. And they lost out because they did not anticipate and act on market transitions. So I looked at the market transitions before I built the company. And I looked at it on three dimensions. One was on the emergence of cloud and IoT. It clearly was coming of age by that time. Number two, by the way, anybody who is a 10-year-old or longer or older technology software stack, and they said that they are cloud native, I would question them that if they didn't write it from scratch, they could not be cloud native, period. Number two, we saw that emergence of AI and the soft bots. And I said, this is the time. And number three, I saw the adoption of anything as a service, whether it's Zoom, whether it's Salesforce, whether it's Okta. So I said, market is eventually ready for this. These were the three major dimensions that I paid a lot of attention to. And AI was a pretty big one. So let me talk a little bit about AI and see and convey to you as to how different we are. So AI, first of all, has tremendous potential to shape the networking industry. AI can improve the efficiency of learning about the environment, first and foremost, and designing the network that will suit the environment, right? AI can shorten the time it takes to deploy the network by helping the installers and more to navigate through the everyday pitfalls that they come across. When it comes to the post deployment, AI can help customers to automatically unearth the issues and resolve them automatically so the user experience is uninterrupted. And I'll come back to that. This is the major thing that we do very different compared to anybody else. And and also AI has the ability to transform the customer experience and user experience while interacting with the network management systems, by the way, through the chatbots, right? especially the generative AI, which is what we use, has made us think that how we can possibly analyze the user behavior, not on few or hundreds, but thousands of dimensions, which was not previously feasible or even possible. So the generative AI has applicability across all these networking life cycles, including security. And we'll come back to security in a while. Most of the, and when you ask me about this, most of the AI networking today, and when people tout about AI, especially in the companies which started 10 years or older, my natural pushback to them is 10 years ago, Nvidia was a video game company and a crypto company. So I'm like, how did you become AI native? Like, couldn't have been, right? Uh, so these folks they're focused on the chat interfaces, not solving the real customer issues or challenges. The networking industry started, as you know, with the command line interfaces, right? Then they moved on to the cloud based management system. That, by the way, I would say not fully embraced and adopted, but they tried. Now they have replaced, by the way, both of them with a chat interface presented by, powered by rather, the LLMs. And they answer the questions about the state of the network problems it has and how to troubleshoot them. They really do not solve the problem. They say, oh, if you have a problem with VLAN, if you have this problem or that problem, we have a tool to help you diagnose and fix it. They leave it to the end customer to fix it, right? So, in fact, they cannot solve the problems because the network with the legacy vendors are not built with the. This is the major difference, Sean. They're not built with the key ingredient for AI in mind, which is data. How can you collect data from networks built from different vendors, different knobs, different architectures, different feeds and speeds? Without data, you cannot learn. You can only provide fancy dashboards, which is what they do and answer questions, right? That is what their legacy vendors are doing. Customer problems of patching, versions, upgrade issues, and millions of combinations of software and firmware still exist. So, I mean, let customers not be fooled. What we have done, and I'll stop it there. What we have done is we build this on three major principles: single architecture, closed loop design, and automation, ruthless automation everywhere. This is what has given us power. So, what I started earlier to say that we are doing what public cloud providers did to compute and storage. We do that for networking. But more importantly, once it is, we are very simple from day minus one. But day two, especially once it is deployed, we are like Waymo. Nobody has to touch anything. We provide tons of visibility, but essentially it operates automatically, and
Okay, quick
we have
question. You
many
said it
methods to do that.
earlier, and I really want to. I don't want to skip it. I'm kind of curious. You'd mentioned the importance of data there. Now, that data that's needed, does it give the incumbents a huge advantage, or because these incumbents might have been built in a way without collecting data, it gives rise to the opportunity to be disrupted?
Yeah, it is actually, it gives an opportunity to be disrupted because number one, data is not coherent. By the way, we have a very unified data model because of our single architecture and the a closed loop automation that we have done, right? That gives us a lot of power to do what we do, right? And because regardless of if there is something, that data piece that we look at on access point or on switch or something, it means going across. It means the same identical thing, and uh, you know, uh, we are fortunate that we built the company with that single architecture has the roots in building it from a Lego system. So what we call Nile service block, which has at the core, which has a very high end of enterprise class access point, enterprise class access switch, distribution switch, sensors, our controller, and then the stack in the cloud. The way we have built it is like a Lego. And by the way, so we can use one Lego in a small deployment. When we go to the large deployments, all we have to do is to plug Lego into one another. We don't have to have hundreds of product SKUs and have so many, the over a dozen enterprise architectures, and that each architecture supported by 15 or 16 protocols, and each protocol supported by a few hundred to over 1,000 knobs that somebody can tweak, and then each of the product having hundreds of SKUs, each SKU having different software revision levels. When you multiply all of that, Sean, do you know what you have? You have a snowflake in every deployment. Okay, you cannot manage. This is what gives us an incredible ability to, when we discover a software bug, which we discover very rarely, when we discover a software bug, we have an ability to populate their entire our entire customer install base of that bug in one shot. Okay, that would take the incumbents many quarters to many years. I'll give you another example, by the way, as to how automated and how AI plays, and what I just narrated plays a major role, right? Which is, um, when we started to deploy a little bit over 2 years ago, when we came out of the stealth mode, we had a second customer, and the customer says, "Hey, we need to have your own. We need to have a live support for." We said, "Support for what? This is the automated service." There are, and I used to kid with them. I said, the gods in the cloud are looking out for you," and and said, "No, you don't get it." I said, "Well, when you run into a problem with Google, who do you call? There's no 1-800 call Google." And he said, "No, you don't understand. This service has to be up all the time, and we need the live support." So I said, "Okay, fine." We got to 800 lines for them, and they said, "No, not just 800 lines. We need real human beings to really be powered by to power the lines." And I said, "Okay." So grudgingly, I uh, I put in a team, uh, 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 3 and 4 here and in India, so we can do round the clock shifts, 8-hour shifts around the clock. We started that, Sean, when we had a couple of deployments. Today, I still have only 7 people. Challenge, I have over 500 deployments. I have challenged my team. Even when deployment reaches over 10,000, I'm not going to add a single human being. And this is not because I want to be cheap, but I I insist that the level of automation that we have done and the AI that we have used, there should be no need to add more human beings, because I come from decades of looking at this giant network operation center and the operators sitting with the terminal, like, for NASA in Houston, like, army of people looking at the big screens, and, like, where the outage and whatnot. I'm like, in my universe, that will never happen, and we don't. I'll give you another example without naming the customer, which is, we have
Pankaj, I really also want to steer the
this.
conversation as well too, because you're at Cisco for so long and you went through so many acquisitions. For our audience out there, that this is an area that they're curious and fascinated about it. I mean, I don't think there's anyone else around that is such an expert. So, a question for you: when is the decision to go out and acquire technology versus build it internally versus all those decisions from those years and years experience that you had?
So what we used to do was there were a few factors, right? One is you at Cisco too. We focus quite a bit on market transitions, right? And as big as we were, and even though we spent the amount of money we spent, you could not keep up with everything, right? It's impossible. And you look for market transitions, you look for technology disruptions, and you pay attention to the companies who are doing that very well. Number one. Number two, a lot of times some of our large customers would come to us and would tell us that, hey, by the way, we noticed that in this new emerging area, there are this couple of companies who we really like, and you should pay attention to. You should take a look at. I would say typically a lot of that knowledge came from the field and the sales team. Okay. Number three, we always paid attention to if we were to take a look at a given company, how it's going to be aligned to a corporate vision and the strategy. It has to. Okay. We were also maniacal about our architectural and the portfolio mix. It has to be right at the end of the day. And the last two factors that we were a bit more sensitive to, Sean, which was about the cultural match was very important of the companies that we are acquiring. Okay, uh, we never acquired the company just for technology and then have a bunch of people go. We were never in that business. Hiring the talent was front and center, was very important, very critical. So the culture match was very important. Then last but not the least, geographical proximity was also very important, because we didn't want to, even though we made some, look, when John and I were there, we together we acquired over 180 companies. So obviously we are going to make some mistakes, and some companies were acquired not in necessarily in the geographical area that we wanted to acquire them in, but we were careful to make sure that we don't go and acquire in the areas that we should not be, right? So
What's more important, making sure that the geography is right, or the culture is right, or the the technology that you're acquiring?
well, um, I would say technology and the culture would dominate a lot more, you know. But at the same time, I would also say that geography wise, uh, that played an important role. There were some instances where they were not necessarily in the right area, and we said uh, that's okay, and we let it go, right? And we did. So it doesn't need to be always looked at one or the other, right? You have to be very careful about some areas, right? And we were, by the way. So
I think the future of Silicon Valley, with how fast technology is moving, that companies are going to get acquired a lot earlier on in their cycle, seed stage maybe, or do you think the world of venture capital in general is going to be disrupted just by the speed of this technology with AI?
well, look, the we are already seeing that in AI, and look at what's going on with Meta and these guys on OpenAI, Meta, Google, and others. They're paying premium money for the top talent. A couple of days ago, it was in news that one big company was accusing the other company of paying $100+ million bonuses to acquire this talent. Wow, right? Look at the acquihires made for some of the early transactions, right? So clearly AI is doing that in a very different way. I mean, it's clearly the rules which were, or the norms, I would say, not the rules, the norms that were established many months ago. Those norms are not quite followed today, right? I mean, they're not there today. So,
Is now going to have a corporate venture arm? Does it already?
oh no, 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 we don't. I mean, we are too small for corporate venture. But hopefully, we will grow. We'll grow into a big enough company, and we'll have enough success. And having a corporate venture arm will be great. Will be positive. Actually, would not be would not be a bad thing to do.
Now, for most of your career, another quick question. I mean, Cisco is a public company. Nile's a private company. Do you miss the public company world at all?
Well, I mean, there are. Look, I mean, you always miss the people you work with, right? I bump into my colleagues who left or who are still there. So you miss the people. You miss the camaraderie of people. You miss. Now we are beginning to work with the customers, but there, day in and day out, I was working with the customers in a very different way, right? And whether it was crisis, whether it was selling new technology, really peddling and positioning the new acquisition and more. So it was a very different persona. So sure, you miss it, right? But at the same time, I enjoy what I do, which is when we started the company, I was doing, I mean, not just uh, uh, in the beginning, for 4 years, I did finance, HR, and payroll for the entire company for 4 years myself. I was, I was, I'm sorry, I was cheap and frugal to make sure that I don't spend on, like I would get the online packages and I would do that myself, right? But you learn that, hey, and more, it's one is to save money, but another one is to set the right culture in the company and to really tell the team that, hey, we all got to do our part, and and you all got to chip in and to really help out for the success that we create.
Question there. A lot of people seem to that are very successful in the corporate world aren't able to transition to the startup world. How are you able to transition?
That is a great question, and my honest answer to you would be that one skill I developed over my career, all the way going back to my very first job, I learned the importance of a customer in my life. And I was fortunate that my dad was a small businessman, and we used to go to his shop, me and my brothers. And I was the youngest in the family, and my dad was very tough. And when the customer would walk in, he will like order us and get us to do small things of getting Coke, coffee, or whatever. And like, we're like, we had to stand up and we had to be attentive to focus on the customer since I was a little boy. And so that was very formative in my mind from day one. And that part stayed with me throughout my career. And you can check with the people at Cisco even today that I was always one of the most customer focused and customer centric executives in the company. And I've remained that even today. And the reason why I'm able to transition is that one very important skill I learned in my life um, is to be able to listen and to be able to form the relationships and the trust at every level that I interacted with. And I did that with my engineering team. I did that with my marketing team. I did that with my customers, all the way from the time you touch them all the way till uh, you end the interaction. You made sure that you always delight them, right? So I always and this is where I am very grateful to John Chambers, because he instilled in me. He said, Pankaj, remember, we only have two currencies: uh, trust and a track record. And he will always say that never lose that. And and I have done my best not to. And and last but not the least comment I would make is that, thank God, I was I was an okay engineer, but I focused more on the human part, which paid off in spades, right? So, and by the way, that part, whether you're in a big company or in a small company, it's that has a huge value, and that has become, I would say, one of the biggest differentiator for me in my career.
Oh God, that's so powerful. I kind of want to end it there, but at the same time, I do want to get at least one more question in because we do have some time. Earlier, you had mentioned you were on 10 different boards there after you um, semi-retired for a short amount of time. What what are the best board practices? How did you go about currently picking your board after so much experience? For our listeners that are first time or second time founders, what advice can you give them about the board?
Well, I mean, what I would say is that when people are picking the board, you want to pick the board members, each and every one of them, who can be net additive to your company and to your mission. You want a different persona of the board members. You will need some help in the early days. You're going to need help who can provide a good sounding board to your strategy, to as you roll a little bit more and you are closer to delivering a proof of concept or something on go to market motion. As you grow uh, even mature in the phase, you want some board members who can help you connect with the industry, help you connect with the customers. As you become more mature, you want some of finance and compliance talent. So, you are going to need different board members who can who can provide you a different expertise. The other thing that I would say is that uh, pick the ones who can provide you with the very complementary um, uh, uh, look out to how you think about a problem and how you think about going to market, uh, dealing with your team, people, strategy, customers, how you think about it, that somebody is going to bring a very different point of view. A lot of times, I see that some of the board members love to bring in people who are their buddies or who think like them, and then they miss out on. I don't mean the diversity in a typical diversity that people think about. That is important. However, I think what is more important is diversity of opinion. And that is so critical in the board that you design. And this is something that I have learned over the time, that when people come up with the board, you know, to have a mix, not have all the investors. Make sure that you are going to have some independent board members who can give you some other advice that you need. Obviously, investors are very important because they're the ones who are bringing money and they're going to connect you with a lot of people, right? But you also need others.
All right. And if anyone wants to learn more about Nile yourself, what's the best way to go about doing it?
Well, go to our website. It's there, nilesecure.com, and we have a lot of content available that you'll be able to learn. Give us a phone call or your questions through the website, and we'll be very quick to respond.
Fantastic. And for our audience out there, when I'm not the host of the Silicon Valley podcast, I'm an investment banker focused on mergers, acquisition, growth capital. Connect with me at svhcapital.com. And also for our website, go to the siliconvalleypodcast.com to check out all our archives and to see what we're up to in the future, such as the Create the Future event, August 14th in San Francisco. And then our little disclaimer, the views expressed on this podcast are for informational purposes only and not financial or legal advice. Consult with a professional for your specific situation, and the views do not necessarily reflect the views of Finalis or Finalis Securities LLC, member FINRA SIPC. Gosh, thank you for this incredible episode.
Thank
and
you.
I look forward to continuing the conversation August 14th.
Thank you so much, my friend. Have a great day.